Hi, everyone. I'm April Ibarra, and this is Bold Not Old. My mission is simple it's to empower you on your midlife journey to gain clarity and confidence for the future. That's where the bold comes in. I think we need to have confidence, and this time of life is the perfect time. We can reflect any time in our life, but I do believe around the 50s is that sweet spot where it's time to sit down and ask yourself a question you may have never asked yourself. Who am I? And where am I going? And what in my life is working for me? And what do I need to change? We spend so much time planning everything else. We might plan someone's birthday party. We'll plan vacations. We'll sit down with our financial planner and plan for the future. But what about your life? How do you want to live it? And in order to look to the future, that's intention, that's the next thing we'll talk about. We have to start by looking back and not dwelling, but understanding who we are. How did we get here? Where do we want to go? And what matters most to us rather than just living by default. So it's not about living in the past, but it's really taking the time to understand how your past has impacted you, good ways and bad ways, and to start to create a roadmap for the future. And that's really what living bold, not old is all about. Because we can't move forward intentionally until we understand where we've been. So we'll start with reflection, and it matters because we spend so much of our time. Adulthood is a very tough time, right? We're raising children, we're working, we're building a career. We might be taking care of our aging parents. We're taking care of everyone, especially if you're a woman, but yourself. And you deserve the time to give yourself a little bit of space to just kind of say and sit with yourself. And even if you just allow a little bit of quiet time, a little bit of journaling, a little bit of meditation without the noise, and just to start to listen to your heart and quite frankly your gut. I think that's we learn so much from our gut. It matters because if we don't do this, then we really can't decide where to go, right? And that's an important part of moving forward, but we got to understand where we've been. Who am I now? What's working in my life? What isn't? What do I want more of? And what do I want less of? What do I need to get rid of? Who do I need to get rid of? Right? Reflection helps us to shift from just reacting in our life to designing. And that's what we want to do. I've had many nudges in my life. I'll call them nudges. And oftentimes change comes from crisis or trauma. And I'm just going to encourage you to not wait for something terrible to happen before you make changes in your life. Let's do it now. But throughout my life, I've had those nudges. In my 40s, I was in a very bad relationship. Most people who know me can't imagine I would have been in such a bad relationship, a bad marriage. And I remember feeling, I mean, I was putting on a face. Nobody knew what was going on in my life behind closed doors. You may understand that. You may be going through that yourself. And this was when Oprah was big. And I was sitting in my basement, probably doing a little yoga, and I had Oprah on. And she looked at the TV and she said, "Are you living your best life ever?" And I burst into tears because to me, that was sort of a wake up call because I knew I was phony baloney. On the outside, I was playing along like everything was great. On the inside, I was destroyed. And I knew at that moment, if I didn't make a change, my life was going to just go to hell. And I was never going to be able to get it back. So I listened to that nudge. And I'll tell you, I felt it in my heart, but I also felt it in my gut. And I was able to leave that marriage and move on. And I've had several of those nudges. I've got the addict story. I was divorced for several years in my life. I pulled it back together. I went to therapy. I went to Al-Anon. I had married an alcoholic. My mother was an alcoholic. I got my shit together. And on paper, everything looked great. And honestly, I was in a good place, but I was also alone. I had been divorced for, probably 10 years. And I was turning 50 and I wanted to go to Italy. And I didn't want to go with girlfriends and I didn't want to go alone. I wanted a romantic trip to Italy, and that wasn't going to happen. So I went up to my attic where I was living in Newport, Kentucky, and I would go up there to do yoga. I felt closer to God, and I literally sat on my mat and I felt, I put an intention out there. And I said, I am ready to receive love and I am ready to give love. I'm healthy. I'm ready. And I knew I needed to start making better choices because as I reflected back on my life, I realized I keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. Nothing was going to change if I didn't change, right? Had nothing to do with asking for anything other than accepting my own decisions in life and deciding what I wanted. And literally, a few months later, I met Pablo, and we've been together now 10 years and married for 8. So I believe if I can find love and happiness after 50, anyone can. So that's what reflection does for you. I also realized that I had a very traumatic childhood. I was raised by an alcoholic. I never knew my father. We all have trauma. There's a lot more to the story. But long story short, I started having some health problems in my 50s. And I started to realize, as I look back, as I reflected, that trauma and the years of living in what I called fight or flight was still with me. I'm 62 now, and I still feel like I'm waiting for the sky to open up. Regardless of all the work I've done, the happy marriage that I'm in, I still have that in my body. We store trauma, and that was causing a lot of health problems. So I had to reflect and then look forward and say, how do I fix this? I can't keep living like this. I don't need to. So that's the beauty of reflection, is really kind of taking a look back and saying, what brought me here? And what do I need to hang on to? What do I need to take responsibility for? So we've all had those moments. We've all had things in our life. Nothing's perfect. I'm not looking for perfect, but we also can't put our head in the sand. I think back to that marriage, and if I hadn't left then and I had continued to stay in that relationship, where would I be now? I'd be a much different person. So it takes a lot of courage to not just live on default and say, well, this is how it's going to be. It doesn't have to be, especially as we get older. This is the time. So you want to look back. What challenges have made me stronger? What lessons have I learned? What am I most proud of? What do I need to let go? All those kind of things. And then you kind of look at yourself now. What's energizing me? What's draining me? What am I settling for? What am I tolerating? Ask yourself the very hard questions. And then you want to look forward. What do I want more of? What do I want less of? And if I was designing my next chapter intentionally, what would it look like? And it doesn't take a lot to do this. I'm just asking you to give yourself the space and the time to do this and start really noticing who you are, what you do, what's working, what's not. So reflection is the first step. Then we go to intention, which is once we kind of understand some of our past and what brought us here and what we like, what we don't like, then we can start to look to the future to really begin an intentional life. Because if we don't do it now, you're going to wake up one day and you're going to be 70 or 80 and you're going to say, how did I get here? Because you just floated along, let things happen, and we really can't do that. There's so much value in taking this time at 50-ish, right? Never too late, never too early, quite frankly, to think about how we want to live our life. And that goes across many different parts of our life. And the framework that I have that I'll continue to teach is first the reflection, the intention. Then we go into action, right? Because we can think all we want, but we got to do something about it. And then there's accountability. We got to stay the course. We got to be responsible. And then there are several different pillars because our life is made up of many things, right? It's our health, our vitality. Do we have the strength and the energy to do the things that we want to do? It's resilience. It's our ability to go through shit and bounce back. Because a good life is not without loss and pain and suffering. We're going to have that. That's normal. It's how we deal with it. It's how we bounce back and keep going and keep rebuilding. And we never say, oh, I'm too old. I can't do this now. You're never too old. It's not too late. So we've got vitality, we've got resilience, we've got purpose. We've got to talk about how do you build purpose into your life, especially after you've retired, or maybe you're an empty nester. All these things start to change in our 50s and 60s, and that's why it's a great time to start rebuilding and relooking at our life. Connections. Who do we have in our life that matters to us, that we matter to? I think I've mentioned this before, but loneliness is an epidemic in all ages. And it has as much impact on our health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. We must have people in our life. We have to have good relationships. This might be the time to examine old friendships or family members who aren't quite, bringing you the peace and joy, and making some changes with that. So connections are important. Lifestyle. How do we spend our days? Are we spending all of our time scrolling on the phone? Are we spending our time just working? Are we sleeping too much? I mean, what is our lifestyle like? That's an important part. And then the legacy. What do we want our lives to be about? So this is the time to do this. So my challenge for you is to spend 30 minutes a week. It's not too much. To ask yourself these questions. You grab a journal, take a walk, sit with a cup of coffee, and just ask yourself one question. What do I want? And what is my life trying to teach me right now? So your life has given you a lot of valuable lessons, and reflections will help you uncover them. And the goal isn't to dwell on the past, but it's to use that past to create a future that aligns with what you want moving forward. Because aging is inevitable, but how we age is not. So we don't want to spend our time on autopilot just hoping things work out. We can be more intentional.